Hello, good morning, welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. This is Damn Radio. You are listening to International Flavor coming to you live from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. How does that make you feel? I hope it makes you feel good this morning. You know, when you're sitting around in a world of nothing but bad news. I mean, when do we get good news? You know, you always, and I suppose it's the shock content. Ever since I was a kid, you got everybody fighting for a headline. Now everybody's fighting for clicks. I believe I'm guilty of this. You go in and you look for the click, what news you're interested in. What does that mean? Does it mean that we are creating our own news in part? It's a curious thought because I believe that your requests, certainly in AI, there's a danger in AI. Okay, everybody, I don't know if everybody knows this, but but I've been doing quite a bit of research on AI over the last year and getting some things together for me, and I use it. I use it pretty frequently, and it is getting much better extremely quickly, and that in itself is scary. I've sent you a couple of stories about AI, and how AI. Now they're talking about bias, in AI bias, and in a thing. Well, but the AI bias is something like I'm not. How do I want to put this? I don't want to be negative about AI because I'm not. I'm extremely positive. But like any platform, like any technology, it's going to take a little bit of development. It's going to take a bit of getting used to. And what I have discovered, using it every day for at least the last year, I've been using it for some fantastic things to get things done. And I did some research on my research, okay, and I actually, how do you want to put it? Natively came up with this. It wasn't something I read online, but everybody else has come to the same conclusion. So well, not the same, but very similar. So I've shared with you stories before, like in England, that case where a Qatari attorney, unlicensed in Britain, hired a British attorney, and he gave the British attorney some case law that he had developed on AI. At least he's the one who took the fall for it, because they went all the way up to the High Court, and in the High Court they were smacked down because they had a whole bunch of law that was not law. It was law that didn't exist, and the guy who was a lawyer in another country, he's the one who took the blame anyway. Now the guy took the punishment anyway because he should have checked, but he the other guy tried to make it easy on him, and that's happened a few times, a few different states here in America. I follow it sometimes, and the danger is of submitting incorrect cases. It will research and find for you potentially incorrect case law. So you use it on LexisNexis, or you use it on Westlaw, or any of the big ones. There's quite a few big platforms out there that advertise that they have the AI links, and the only way to do it is to build your own. And so you've got to build your own, and you have to have your own system and your own mechanism for verification, even if you're using any of the big ones. And that's just how it works, and it's like that with everything. But the discussions on a whole lot of these places are the bias that just your questions have. And I don't know if you've looked at this or not, but if you go on to Grok or DeepSeek or any of the Chat GPT, I think even has it. A couple other ones have them on there. And you have yourself the vocals. So you're having a vocal discussion with your AI. I've done this before. And you put the AI lady up there. I always use a woman. I don't know why. I just use a woman to talk back to me. Maybe I like a woman talking back to me. Who knows? But I use a woman's voice. But you can pick anything. You can pick like an Australian, I don't know, backwoodsman if you want to on a lot of these places. Please respond to me in Russian. I do that all the time. And I use it quite a bit for trying to get direct translation. And it's hard to do, and even that you got to check. Okay, so because all of these things, there are a billion bits of information going out. That's why the power takes so much. But you can have it research documents for you and read these documents in grand form. But the bias based on your questioning is extremely interesting. There's a lot of discussions going up on that, and I say stay tuned on that because there's a lot of discussion about this going on. And there's several different global forums about this AI, and it's very, very important. They're using it in military. They're using it in analysis of intelligence. Is that frightening or what? There's plenty of frightening stuff. Anyway, stay tuned on this, on the AI part. There's, in fact, just while I'm sitting here, that JR has all the TVs up running on here. I suppose it's not JR. All the TVs are always up. But there's one up here that says combating bias in AI. Holy crap. Combating bias in AI. And maybe it was subliminal. Maybe people talked about your telephone before telling you what you wanted to see, or your phone spying on you, and all of a sudden you start getting news stories that on a discussion you had with somebody at lunch and your phone was laying on the side of the table. Who's spying on who? Scary stuff, friends and neighbors. Stay tuned because we're going to get into a little bit of this. I wanted to share with you this morning over the last few days of my show, I have been sharing with you a lot of the events that went on in Davos and the fracture that's evident in world politics and in some of the things that's going. The Carney-Trump discussions that have been, I don't know, that were a big part of the media last week. Certainly for me, it was a big deal what they were talking about. I want to share with you, and it's a little bit longer than I normally do, but it's a news story from, who is this? It's somebody with only 65,000 subscribers. So nobody huge on, it's a news channel, but it's not a huge one. And it's a story on Mark Carney. And I brought to you in full his speech last week in Davos in front of everybody. And I also brought to you quite a bit of discussion on Davos since that time. And Canada and the shift, the diversion on, well, maybe the hedging of their bets would be a better way to put it. The hedging of their bets with going to China. And one of the things that came out recently, and what China has been doing, they did it with America too, by the way. We have this. Visa-free travel to China. So going to China, you could never really go before. You could, but it's a pain in the ass to get a visa. And I don't mean your Visa, MasterCard. I mean getting a visa. So for me, this is a part of my life anyway, because I like to travel. And if you go to Russia, my visa, and I've told you about this on my Russian stuff, my visa expires the end of February, and I'm all depressed because I have to go get another one. And I got fortunate in the last time that I got a 3-year Russian visa. And usually you get it's called a mnogokratnaya, more than one time, multiple entry. You get a multiple entry visa to go back and forth. When my wife came here from Russia, she got a multiple year, multiple entry visa to come back and forth to the United States. Very hard for a Russian to get coming to America. But she had one, and she had come back and forth a number of times, traveled to the United States, liked it, going back and forth. I've done the same thing going back to Russia. But it's no guarantee that you'll get a second one. It's no guarantee. They don't have to let you in if they don't want to. And so I'm certainly going to apply for a new one, because one of the highlights of my life has been being able to go to Russia at will. I've gone once or twice a year, once 3 times. I've gone to sanatoriums. I've gone to some fantastic places over there, and I've got some excellent stories of Russia, of Russians, of the culture over there, of all that other stuff. It's something that, to me, is important in life. And visa-free access to travel is one of the strong things that people fight for on their passports, right? They rate passports. You can go out and you can find a country. America used to be number one. We're somewhere in the, I don't remember where, like in the top 20 somewhere with the visas, as far as the number of countries we can go to visa-free without getting a visa to go to a country. Russia is advancing, but they're much further down the list. And China is pretty far. Well, they're getting better, where they are down. I haven't looked at the list in a while, but the last time I looked, it was America was in the. It was between 10 and 20. I want to say 15, 16 down the list now, and we're no longer in the top 10. But we used to be in the top 10, and some of your places have the number one. I should probably look it up for you and tell you which one it is that have the visa-free travel. But of big news are the China-Canada talks. And so I wanted to share with you this. And one of the big deals is visa-free access between the two countries. And this is, at least the Canadians going to China. We may have to check out and see what they've allowed on the Canadian side, but they were pretty clear, and I don't think it goes both ways yet, but I don't know. We're going to listen to this story because it's a good story, and it falls in line with what we've been talking about Davos, about the rupture in world politics, about the rupture in hegemony, and one country rule, although Trump is trying to reinstall that, as it were, but without any hangers on. It's now brute force, period. We're brute force, do what we say, and he's actually smacked down. There are plenty of stories about Trump tariffs, and he's not going to talk to Carney anymore. There's been a bunch of that going on as well over the last couple of days as a result of Davos. And so we're going to share this article because when I listened to it, I thought it was fairly well done. So here we go. It's called Canada-China Talks Achieve a Major Breakthrough. Okay. And you can, we're going to listen in even now. Where are we? And to make sure we have it, here we go.
In recent years, the relationship between Canada and China has been characterized by turbulent exchanges, escalating tensions, and trade restrictions. Diplomatic spats between the two nations have caused significant rifts, especially in sectors like trade, security, and international politics. However, a pivotal moment of reconciliation occurred in January 2026 when Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, made his first official visit to Beijing in over 5 years. The meeting marked a dramatic shift in the diplomatic and economic relationship between Canada and China, as both leaders signalled a commitment to moving beyond past discord. The visit by Mark Carney and his meeting with Xi Jinping, President of China, represented an important reset of Canada-China relations. It was not just a meeting between two heads of state, but a declaration of intent to rebuild trust and cooperation after years of strained interactions. At the heart of this historic meeting was the shared desire to open new doors for collaboration and strengthen mutual respect between the two nations. With an increasingly complex global environment, the relationship between Canada and China is evolving into a more stable and pragmatic partnership. The visit was a clear effort to break free from the tensions of the past. For both countries, the reset had far-reaching implications across multiple sectors, including trade, travel and diplomacy. This marked a fresh opportunity for Canada and China to foster a positive, mutually beneficial relationship moving forward. The atmosphere in Beijing was one of cautious optimism as both nations sought to reconcile differences and explore areas of shared interest. Trade has long been a cornerstone of Canada-China relations, but in recent years, the two countries' economic ties were strained. Political disagreements and the imposition of tariffs and trade restrictions created obstacles for industries in both nations. In particular, Canada's agricultural exports were adversely affected by punitive tariffs, especially in sectors such as canola seed, a crop for which China has historically been one of Canada's largest markets. During the high-level talks in Beijing, Mark Carney emphasised the importance of rebuilding the agricultural trade relationship, noting China used to be the largest market for Canadian canola seed. We want to not just return to those levels, but to surpass them. The discussions were centred on removing the barriers that hindered trade and revitalising Canada's export industry, especially in agriculture. One of the major announcements from the talks was a preliminary agreement to reduce tariffs on a range of agricultural products. China agreed to lower tariffs on Canadian canola seed to approximately 15% by early March 2026, down from the significantly higher tariffs that had been imposed in recent years. This move is expected to have a profound impact on the Canadian canola industry, which had struggled due to prohibitive tariffs. Industry leaders in Canada expressed cautious optimism, hoping that this reduction would restore competitiveness and stabilise the market for Canadian producers. The reset in trade also went beyond agriculture. Both countries recognise the need to diversify their economic relationships. While the United States remains Canada's largest trading partner, there was growing recognition that Canada must reduce its reliance on one market. As the global economy continues to evolve and uncertainties mount, deepening trade ties with other major economies like China is seen as an essential step in ensuring Canada's long-term economic stability. In light of ongoing trade tensions with other nations and the risks of overdependence on one market, Canada has increasingly sought to strengthen its relations with China. By improving ties with China, Canada is positioning itself to play a more prominent role in the global economic system, reducing its vulnerability to market fluctuations in the United States and beyond. For China, the benefits of improving trade relations with Canada are equally significant. As one of the world's largest consumers of agricultural products, China sees the opportunity to source high-quality goods from Canada as a way to enhance its domestic market. Beyond agriculture, China is also keen to tap into Canada's vast resources and technology sectors. Both leaders expressed interest in expanding collaboration in areas such as clean technology, electric vehicles and advanced industries, marking a shared commitment to advancing industrial partnerships and technological innovation. Another major outcome of the meeting between Mark Carney and Xi Jinping was the announcement of a visa-free travel agreement for Canadian citizens. This breakthrough represents a significant shift in people-to-people relations, which have long been hindered by restrictive visa requirements. The announcement was a welcome one for Canadians who for years faced cumbersome visa processes when travelling to China. I'm very pleased to share that President Xi, in our meeting today, has committed to ensuring visa-free access for Canadians travelling to China, said Mark Carney. This announcement was not just a practical step forward, it symbolised the intention of both countries to open up avenues for greater engagement, especially in sectors like tourism, education and business. The decision is expected to have immediate positive effects on Canadian citizens who will benefit from easier access to one of the world's most significant global markets. The visa-free travel arrangement is likely to stimulate tourism, academic exchanges and business collaborations between Canada and China. More students, tourists and business people will have the opportunity to engage with each other, fostering greater cultural understanding and economic ties. This agreement also marks a clear signal from both nations that they are ready to overcome past tensions and work together more cooperatively. Moreover, this agreement carries symbolic weight as it demonstrates a shift towards more open and transparent communication between the two nations. It is a tangible manifestation of the reset in diplomatic relations, providing an opportunity for Canadians to experience China more directly and for Chinese citizens to visit Canada with fewer bureaucratic hurdles. The high-level talks between Mark Carney and Xi Jinping were not just limited to trade and travel. The discussions also touched on broader strategic issues, including security, regional stability, and cooperation on global challenges. Over the past decade, political disputes, security concerns, and retaliatory measures had created significant obstacles to meaningful dialogue between Canada and China. Diplomatic engagement had become sporadic, with trust eroded on both sides. During the talks, both Carney and Xi emphasized the importance of managing differences through constructive dialogue and cooperation. They recognize that while their nations may not always agree on every issue, there are still areas where they can find common ground. The reset in relations reflects a mutual understanding that stability and cooperation are crucial, especially in an increasingly unpredictable global environment. The reset also underscores the importance of sustained diplomatic efforts as both countries work towards more predictable and transparent engagement. Mark Carney stated, "We may not agree on all issues, but through continuous communication, we can manage differences effectively and build a foundation of trust for the future." As Mark Carney wrapped up his visit to Beijing, both sides expressed optimism about the future of their relationship. The announcements made during the visit represent a positive shift in the trajectory of Canada-China relations, but the work is far from over. While agreements on visa-free travel and trade have been reached, the details of these agreements still need to be fully implemented, and new challenges may arise in the coming months. The visa-free travel arrangement, for example, requires both nations to ensure that administrative and security procedures are in place. Likewise, the reduction in tariffs on agricultural products will require further regulatory steps to finalise and ensure that both sides uphold their commitments. The implementation of these measures will be crucial in determining whether the reset will lead to tangible long-term benefits. The success of the reset also depends on the continued political will from both sides to follow through on their promises. Canadian business leaders, farmers and investors are watching closely, hoping that the momentum generated by this visit will lead to long-term stability and growth. There are still risks and uncertainties, particularly as both countries navigate the changing dynamics of global trade and politics. Nevertheless, the reset represents an opportunity to move beyond years of diplomatic tension and toward a future of more stable and pragmatic cooperation. The high-level talks between Mark Carney and Xi Jinping in January 2026 represent a significant turning point in the relationship between Canada and China. The agreements made during the visit, from the visa-free travel arrangement to trade breakthroughs, signal a new chapter in diplomatic relations between the two nations. By focusing on areas of mutual interest, both countries have laid the groundwork for a stronger, more cooperative future. The road ahead may not be without its challenges, but for now, both Canada and China are committed to building a more stable and predictable relationship. Whether this newfound partnership will endure and thrive will depend on how well both nations manage to overcome challenges, stay committed to their promises, and ensure that this reset produces tangible results. For now, both nations are focused on turning the page to a new chapter in their diplomatic relationship, with a clear emphasis on cooperation, economic engagement, and people-to-people ties.
So, I tell you what, I found that pretty much enlightening. So I try to, do you remember Steve Martin? Every day I like to do one impossible thing. And so today I'm going to suck this piano stool into my lungs. And he'd take a straw out and, oh darn, and then he'd throw it away. That didn't work. At any rate, one impossible thing is creating a positive world. It appears to me sometimes. And so I want to focus on how important that step is globally and what a punch in the nose it is to the United States based upon what happened in Davos last week and these talks ongoing in multiple areas with China. And other countries, by the way, because they're not alone. Europe is doing the same thing. They're diversifying, and this is some of the effect of how Trump does it. Now, some of it's natural anyway. Some of it has to go this way. So I'm not blaming the old Trumpster. I'm saying that these multiple pathways. I speak about this all the time, and how the world is changing. You need to either get on board, or get off and push. We got to go in the right direction here, right? And the right direction is not all the conflict, okay? I don't prefer to take on a world where everything is about dominance. Everything is about I'm in charge. You outliers there, just, follow me. And I don't like that form of leadership. I dislike it. And I've always been that way. I'm much more of a cooperative leader. Anybody ever take any of those psychological profilers? I'm an INTJ. And the J at the end is a little bit, that's a judgmental portion of it. And I haven't done one of these in a long time. In fact, I can't recall what they all mean anymore. But I believe, is intuitive. I'm an intuitive sort of guy, big picture sort of guy. And so these, we used to use them for hiring when I was an HR director for Fortune 500 companies. We would use them because they're actually a pretty good indicator of how you approach problems in life. And if you don't know what they are, get on there, and I forget what it's called, the Myers-Briggs or something like that, personality profile. And you can get online and take it. I don't know what they charge you for them these days. Back then, we were paying, a couple $100 every time we sent somebody to go get one. And but they were very useful because it's and if you're working as part of a team, you need various types of people to guide a ship, right? And Trump would be on the dictator side for sure, but he's highly performance oriented, highly structural, highly negotiating, all those things. So if you can, and I might look into that for us because it's kind of a cool thing, but how you approach problems in the world is almost as important as what you do when you get there. Okay. And I try, because I'm a little bit on the, I'm intuitive, but I'm also a realist. And the problem is that that means I'm somewhat negative. And I don't mean it, because I'm really not. I'm a generally positive guy. But I think of all the problems that could come up, I'm always thinking about it. I started out by talking to you about AI and the bias that is slanted towards things, and it's still part of the same focus. And the positive outlook of China and Canada right now is something that I prefer over the force concepts. I don't like being forced to do things myself, and therefore I don't like forcing other people. I believe in more of a libertarian stance when it comes to that. Whatever you're doing, more power to you. God bless you. Just don't interfere with what I'm doing. I don't like that. I don't like government overreach telling me what I got to do, and part of that goes to your Myers-Briggs personality profile, who you are, how you adjust, how you approach things, right? And it's important to know who you're dealing with. And I believe that the world is changing. Much of the world has taken shape because of the domineering attitude of the United States over the last at least 30 years since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and how horrible we deal with international problems. We are dictator. We are colonialists, and that is, I don't like that approach, and so I talk about it all the time. And a lot of it gets to where, let's go back to a second with the article on Canada and China and the positive nature of that 11-minute blurb that I gave to you about the China-Canada talks and all the things that they're talking about, from canola oil to visa-free travel. U.S. citizens that go to mainland China, okay, I've looked into this before, you generally have to have a visa. And you can get a 10-year multiple entry visa for tourism or business. You can go to their place online. You have to upload documents, submit passports. Now, it's pretty involved in order to get one, right? There's a couple of visa-free options, because I've looked into this recently. And you can go to Chinese visa centers. And I'll tell you how I got the Russian one, because I'm going to have to go through it again. And it's a similar approach over there. And coming back the other direction, from Russia to America, from China to America, is equally hard steps. It's not easy. It's a process, definitely. And you have to submit your passport physically to the Chinese visa center, Russian visa center too. And some of them have been simplified over time, but the basic rules are this. You have to use an online visa application form that you got to fill out. You do the same for Russia, but I think that one's only in written form. I had to go to Houston. First time I got a visa, I went to Washington, D.C. to go get it. And I believe you can go to Washington, D.C., New York, San Francisco, or Houston, D.C., New York, San Francisco, any one of the Russian consulate centers to get a visa. And I've done the Houston and the Washington, D.C. to go to the Russian consulate to get a visa and take your passport. And it's a long wait. When you get there, you better plan a couple of days. The last time I went, it was a mail-in process, and it was 10 times better, and I got the 3-year, but it cost me a hell of a lot of money. And you give it to a private firm, but they take care of it for you. A hell of a lot of money. The typical thing would be a couple $300, and I think I paid, I don't know, $750, something like that. But I don't remember. And so the application process for China is you fill out the application online. You can get a simplified tourist visa. You're no longer required to submit along with your visa, because here was the pain. You had to submit your air tickets, your round trip tickets. So you buy the tickets, and then you find out whether or not you can go. And a lot of times they want to know what specific hotel you're staying in. You need an invitation from somebody to get a tourist visa. There are all kinds of requirements, or historically there have been. And they're trying to make visa-free travel is kind of a priority with a bunch of these people. So the documents you got to submit. Usually you got to submit your whole passport, the physical passport itself, with a 6-month or more validity period, meaning you got at least 6 months left on your passport, 2 blank pages of stamp area in the back of your, where your visa gets, where they stamp it when you come in. But Americans are no longer required to submit to get a simplified tourist visa, you don't have to submit your round-trip air tickets, your hotel reservations, or an invitation letter to be a tourist. Now, for business, you do. It's a different sort of deal. The documents, you have to get a visa photo, the complete application, a proof of where you reside, a driver's license and utility bill. Usually, you can get a L, which is a tourist visa, a business visa, which is Class M, or a family visit, Q visa, and then you submit it. Well, then they have similar rules for all this, and there are countries where it's extremely hard. Well, as Americans, we've been kind of spoiled. Where you could go places and never have to worry about these processes because we were up on the top of the list for where we would get our visa when you just show up. And showing up, you'd get your visa right there when they stamp it, right? And you stamp it, you make it easy to come in and out. And then when you stamp it, you have whatever the time period is per country, 30 days, 90 days, 180 days. And Canada, U.S. used to have one where it was you could come over and you could stay for 6 months at a time. And so at the border crossing, which you could drive across up in Minnesota, we would drive across into Canada and drive back for shopping and for whatever. And it's all based on the person who is looking at your visa application. Well, you get a jerk, you can probably get out of line, go around a circle, and come back. I've told the story before about me being an idiot when I was in the military and went to Mexico from, what was the name of that place? Fort Huachuca. Fort Huachuca is in Arizona, and I was there for, I don't remember, 2 months or 3 months for some kind of a helicopter school, and Russian-speaking helicopter school. But it was for a quick fix set of system. Quick fix was a collection and jamming platform for helicopters. And so I went to this school and I was there for a while. I was, took my crew chief. I was the interpreter. Excuse me. And we would go to, anyway, we went to Mexico. And on the way back, I was an idiot. I was young, stupid, and thought I was a smart ass. And it's like, and I have a history of not taking things seriously enough. And so we drive across the border. Actually, we didn't drive. We drove down to the border in my old Blazer, and we got out and walked across the border, did some, whatever the town is in across the border from Nogales that I don't remember. And we, it might even be Nogales, I don't remember. But we went into Nogales right there and crossed the border, and we went across, and we spent the day over there, or the weekend, I don't remember. And then we were coming back, and I was a smartass. Important safety tip, never be a smartass, because I handed the guy my military ID to get back. I gave him my military ID, and I was with 7 or 8 other military guys, and we went across, and we were coming back. And on the way back, I'm the smart ass, and the border guy, now it's called ICE, the border guy standing there says, state your country. Well, what country do you? And I looked at him like he was nuts, and I was like, I just gave you my military ID, and he says, state your country that you reside, where you reside, and I said, Jesus, Israel. And I was like, you got my ID. He took me into custody, took me upstairs, and interrogated me for 2-3 hours. Don't screw around with those guys. It's a bad plan. And the whole reason was because I was a smartass. So that's an important safety tip. But I I never lived that down because I was a senior ranking guy at the damn thing. It was my team, for God's sake. And at any rate, it was completely idiotic. And so at any rate, never screw around at the border in any country. I told the story before of when I was in Russia I went to Russia several times, 2-3 times in the last year. I drove across from Georgia, the country of Georgia, into Russia and went to, it was awesome. And I got to go to the place where Sergei Bodrov, a famous Russian actor, was killed in an avalanche while doing a movie. And it was a very, very cool trip. But driving across, coming from Georgia into Russia, there's a border dispute of a little state in between the two. I forget the name of it, but Abkhazia, I don't remember. But in between the two countries, it's a you leave one country and you got to exit Georgia and enter Russia. And there are, I had a visa. I had a Russian visa. I've had a Russian visa for 3 years, and one of the trips when I was driving across. And that entry into Russia took about an hour and a half, and we were in a line, and they were pretty serious at the border, both directions, by the way, because we flew in and out of Tbilisi in Georgia and back and forth in between the two countries driving. And I was in a car full of other people. It was like a minivan, and there were, 7, 8 people, and I'm the only American. And they kept me and quizzed me for a while, wondering what an American was doing coming into Russia by car. And so the other people were kind of upset that we had to wait so long. Most of them just showed their Russian. They said, man, you should have got your own car and stuff like that. Well, I didn't know it would take me an hour and a half. I figured everybody was in the same car, that when you go on a bus, it's generally a pretty quick process. But it can take a while, these visa processes, even after you have the visa coming in and out. They want to know what you're specifically coming in for. Other countries have serious border patrol guards, and you don't screw around when you were there. I would have never, ever, ever thought of saying something smart-ass like that coming into Russia, is my point. And I certainly wouldn't going back into Georgia the other direction. You don't want to get stuck in a country where you can't get in, you can't get out. That's a bad plan no matter who you are. And so I'm perhaps a little more understanding of the visa issues and coming back to, and I think we should have very strict rules and requirements. The rest of the world does, is my point. Why wouldn't the United States? And the United States does at the larger places. We all complain a little bit when you fly into Miami or you fly into New York or you fly into Dallas, these large international hubs, and they make you check your baggage there before you can transfer to your next destination flight, because those are the big places for coming in and getting inspected into the United States at these large airports. Anyway, that's a long story about visa processes, and I apologize for that. But the world is a-changing. And so I prefer the shorter variety of trying to get a visa, the shorter variety of allowing travel in between. And this China-Canada talks, this really is a large breakthrough, with Canadians being granted visa-free travel between Russia and China, between India and China, between several other places and China. China has been opening its doors quite a bit more regularly for other countries. And so China is playing well with others, where the U.S. recently hasn't really been. I do like that we now have some rules, and our borders aren't just wide open, coming across. And I do think that was one big. I remember when Biden got elected, and it was literally within days that the doors were open, and it was just a flood of people coming in. Huge numbers. And I was, as an American, offended by that, especially as an American that traveled. I'm not saying our doors shouldn't be open. They should be. But other countries don't just open their doors and let people to come through. Now, the Schengen visa is a visa in Europe that allows people to travel. If you can get a Schengen, you can go anywhere in the European Union, right? And without a visa, whatever country you're from. And this is one of the big things that Ukrainians want. They wanted that Schengen visa, and they've been giving it to them. And these people are going from country to country. I complain about that too. They're going from country to country and taking the 3 months of free housing and free money in France. And then they're going to Germany and getting the 6 months free there. Then they're going to Poland and getting the 2 years free there, and this is what they are doing. And I've shared stories with you of the girl that went to China. She went to China and was like, hey, they told me I can't stay here and we're not getting anything for free. I'm not going to stay here. They aren't even giving us anything. And she did this on a TikTok video, and that thing went viral for how stupid that girl was to say something like that, like me in the smart ass comment coming back into the United States and saying I was from a country that I'm not from. Just being a smartass. And but her commentary was, that's foolish. And she left. And it didn't cost her anything. She just had to leave China anyway. She said, she was very straight up about it. I'm just going to another country and I'll take, whatever they're giving me free there. So at any rate, a large story, and it's a very, I believe, a positive development for China, Canada. And it makes me think about the bigger picture. What does it mean for China, Canada, Arctic? China, Canada's all along the Arctic. China, if we're worried about China taking over Greenland, which I think is foolish propaganda BS. Neither Russia nor China has any intention of taking over Greenland. So that's nonsensical to even think that way. They don't have any intentions in that regard. Okay, the world's a changing anyway, and I believe that I prefer Canada's approach with trying to develop. That entire story I shared with you was quite a positive development for Canada. And I think our approach, instead of a militaristic, we're taking over the world sort of thing, which I disapprove of, although I understand the what do you call it, the concept. I get it. I get what Trump is trying to do. I just think there are better ways to skin a cat, is all I'm saying. And so anyway, enough on the visa topic. I wanted to share a few more stories that, remember we were talking about free speech, and I wanted to share with you a story about free speech and Elon Musk, okay? X and bullshit go back a very long time. Elon Musk, the owner of X, and this is a story by a guy that I follow all the time. Tariq Amar, his opinions I kind of like. And this one I'm going to share with you about suppression of freedom of speech. Okay? And take from it what you will. I'm not trying to tell you I agree with this or disagree with this. I'm sharing it with you, is all. And I have my own thoughts on it, which I will probably share when I'm done here. But I wanted to share the story with you because it's certainly an interesting story. Elon Musk, who happens to be the world's richest oligarch, a major war contractor through his satellites, giving it free to Ukraine and whatnot, and self-declared free speech absolutist, has claimed that his platform strives to be the town square of the internet by promoting and protecting freedom of expression. But that is not true entirely. In reality, Musk is a man of strong opinions. Not merely an uber capitalist, he is also a very right-wing libertarian, full of odd anxieties, strong enough to produce plenty of posts about whites and their civilization disappearing. And, when in a really good mood, a greeting that looks like a perfect imitation of a fascist salute. Now, that's bullshit, in my opinion. Remember that one where he allegedly was doing a Nazi salute? I don't believe that at all, just so you know. That would all be bad enough, if true, but Musk has also taken to promoting people he likes politically and culturally. For instance, those that glorify, lobby, and make excuses for Israel. Okay. If this is the town square, then it's one where you need a microphone to be heard. And that microphone is under the control of a biased and overbearing mayor and his buddies. Now, I'm telling you, I don't necessarily agree with this, but it's a story I wanted to share. Or, as Musk's own team has put it, X users have freedom of speech, but not of reach. That's an interesting concept, is it not? And I'll share that with you here in a bit. On the other hand, the platform systematically suppresses whatever or whoever the owner doesn't like. Much, but by no means all, of this de facto censorship is imposed by what X itself euphemistically describes as a more reasonable, proportionate, and effective moderation process. What does that mean? That is, often by mass demotion, deboosting, rather than a direct ban. If you say things that Musk, his ideological buddies, his business partners, and his financiers do not like, X is less likely to kick you out, although that option is always there too, than to quietly put you in a tight, soundproof box. You might think you are speaking to others, but X makes sure your voices reach almost no one. Let freedom ring, but in silent mode, please. Okay? Now, I'm not saying I agree with this. It's an interesting story. There is no topic on X where all of the above is more in evidence than Israel. Or to be more precise, Palestine and the endless series of crimes Israelis and their accomplices are committing against Palestinians, from violent, often murderous dispossession to apartheid to de facto mass kidnapping and mass torture, including rape, to ethnic cleansing by genocide. Recently, Grok, X's in-house AI, has revealed that critics of Israeli crimes are being suppressed. Their reach is throttled by 80 to almost 100% of what it would be otherwise. Prompted with a specific phrase, which X users have shared widely, Grok has been delivering detailed insights into how the X algorithm censors those who mention and protest against Israel's current Gaza genocide, its all-purpose brutality, and rogue state wars of aggression against Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. Its habit of assassinations, including of other countries' scientific and political elites, as in Iran and Yemen, or the perverse influence it exerts on the U.S. and, in general, Western politics. According to at least one usually well-informed observer, this is a mass campaign with Elon Musk censoring hundreds of millions of people for a foreign Israeli government. In return, Musk's own customers are calling him a huge threat to freedom of speech. Politically, those targeted by X repression campaign are as different as it gets. They include idiosyncratic, very right-wingers such as Candace Owens, and generally left-wing voices such as journalists and dissidents like Max Blumenthal and Ali Abunimah. Full disclosure, they also include yours truly, that's Tariq Cyril Amar, on the left of the spectrum as well. And it's fairly representative case too. The suppression of the X account at Tariq Cyril Amar, as reported by Grok, is massive and comprehensive, including hiding it and its activity, and in general, reaching 78 to 85% suppression, is what he says. But what is most typical is the big fat lie used to justify the censorship, that somehow the account's open and honest criticism of Israel and its crimes and explicit anti-Zionist, anti-fascist position overlaps with anti-Semitism. That is the core smear used by all defenders of Israel and its genocide, that to be against crimes and the state committing them with no end in sight indicates you are anti-Semitic. This draft lie has long lost all credibility among those with half a brain, except in Musk's world, where it's still good enough to shape what X users are not only allowed to say, but to hear. Both active and passive freedom of speech are a joke there, and all that for Israel. So let's see. These are claims now surfacing. There are claims now surfacing on X that somehow this scandal is not quite real, that Grok isn't delivering real data but a mere simulation. That seems very, very far-fetched and is likely to turn out to have been yet another untruth. For one thing, X has a proven record of suppressing what Israel doesn't like. Last year, Grok itself was suspended when it called the Gaza genocide a genocide. Clearly, Musk's AI has gotten a little too, oh boy, I don't even know this word, perspicacious and honest for its masters. In October 2023, while Israel was launching its genocide and speaking about it proudly, X purged hundreds of Palestinian accounts, depriving the victims of another way to reach out, thus contributing to Israel's policy of siege, blockade, and blackout. It is unclear why Musk is behaving like this. Conviction? Fear? Dogged by some real anti-Semitic signals of his own, Musk has repeatedly done penance by serving Israel and its propaganda. What is clear is that his motives are of decidedly secondary importance. What matters is the atrocious moral failure, not his only one, but his worst. And ironically, Musk, who prides himself on being a bit of a nonconformist and a maverick, is all too representative of the West's rotten elites as a whole, if only he were more exceptional. Now, I don't agree with that all, but you know that here I don't mind providing contrary voices. I don't disagree with it either. Now, Grok, when we started this show today, we were talking about AI. It's kind of the theme of the show a little bit, is talking about the end of censorship and of bias and where the bias comes from and how. Well, if you've ever, I've talked about this, when you, especially a couple, 3 years ago, it's gotten better now because there are other things. But if you did a Google search, or try going out onto any platform out there, Wikipedia even, and try to find a place that isn't slanted so badly to the left when you ask it a question. You do a question about, I don't know what, Bruce Jenner. And you won't get a story about Bruce Jenner and how he how well he shined in the 1976 Olympics. You won't get that. You will get the story about whatever his name is now, Caitlyn Jenner, and the fact that he's an Olympian is no longer even relevant at all. The fact that he is now a woman, that is what is relevant. And so there's certainly a bias if you go out and you search for that. Try it anywhere. You can go to Wikipedia, X, any of the places where we get a lot of our information, including Grok. They are highly twisted, and they do depend upon the owner or the board of directors. Certainly when it was anti-Trump, when X, why did Elon Musk buy Twitter, for example? I remember that debacle. I remember it. Is it gone too far the other way? Is it openness or is it censorship in the other direction? I don't know. Don't care. But it's an interesting theory to be aware of when you're using Grok or you're using any AI or you're using something like Wikipedia or you're watching CNN. Or you're watching Fox News, you're watching news from other sources. This is why the bulk of us are getting our news and information from other sources. And for me, I like a wide variety of sources. I like a wide variety. But then you wonder if what you're doing is the exact same thing, like your telephone listening to you. And worrying about it isn't going to do you any good. Accepting commentary is exactly that, and a libertarian point of view toward others' opinions is playing well with others. And if you can do that on a global stage, you're probably far better off than if you cannot. That's all I'm saying. And when you blanket approve one point of view and despise another and refuse to accept the counter argument or refuse to even listen to the counter argument, perhaps you should take pause and put some thought into that. Is my point, into how you approach the world. And I kind of like the world approach of moderation, of diplomacy, of mediation, and extremes one way or the other, I'm very much against. So I believe that a well-developed worldview means that you listen to all other sources and then share your, hopefully, positive commentary. But sometimes with all the news that we saw, all the news that we see is so negative that you can't help but become slightly negative yourself. And I'm trying to combat that some on my own. There was another story. Now, when did this one come out? This was in 2023. Do you remember when Linda Yaccarino, who was the CEO of X, the company formerly known as Twitter, she revealed the new era of freedom of speech, not reach. I shared that with you as well. So that actually, I like to back up my facts, and that came from a news story written in August of 2023. So that is for real. I wanted to talk about the dictatorship of Ursula von der Leyen. And it's not me saying that, but I wanted to share this story as well. Because last week, again, going slightly back to Davos and the approach of the world toward the economic realities of the world these days, and Trump's dictatorship speech about give me Greenland or give me death, and Canada going off the rails and headed off to China, and many people, like I've analyzed for the last few days, talking about Davos and the changes and what's going on. Kaja Kallas has privately complained now. There's a story about the dictator, von der Leyen. This comes from Politico. European Union foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, is privately complaining about the authoritarian style of European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, says Politico yesterday. She views von der Leyen as a dictator, a senior diplomat told the outlet, adding that there is little or nothing she can do about that. Isn't that true? Previous reports have described the bitter rivalry between these two senior officials, with the commission president holding the upper hand. Well, of course, she's the president. Politico named 5 people in Brussels who it claimed to have the toughest jobs, including Kallas. Another is Paula Pino, von der Leyen's spokesperson, who the outlet reported is often left uninformed by her boss, who works in a bunker with strict need-to-know protocols, making the current commission at times more secretive than the famously opaque Vatican. Last week, von der Leyen survived a 4th no-confidence vote in the European Parliament from non-centrist lawmakers who accuse her of lacking transparency and pursuing policies harmful to the bloc. Well, that's the EU, of course. Her conflict with Kallas reportedly stems from constant efforts to sideline the European External Action Service on key foreign policy matters. Kallas, as a former Estonian prime minister, is herself criticized as unfit for her role. I absolutely believe she is unfit for any role. She is unintelligent, and maybe that's the bias of everything that you hear about her everywhere. But find any piece of information about her that is positive. Anyway, including by EU member Slovakia, partly due to her anti-Russian stance. This lady's hugely anti-Russian. Last September, she was ridiculed by Moscow and Beijing after appearing to treat it as a revelation that Russia and China take pride in defeating Axis powers in World War II. A lot of people, appears to me, including Collis, were unaware that China lost nearly 20 million people in World War II and Russia 26 million. And she expressed surprise about the fact that these two nations honor each other's anniversary of the corresponding ends of World War II, which for Russia is in May, early May, and for China, I believe, is September, but both in the same year. So both of them this past year were celebrating 80 years. And anyway, she had no idea that China was even involved in World War II. And that the fact that Russia and China both take pride in defeating the Axis powers of Hitler and of Emperor, what was his name, in Japan. I honestly don't remember myself, but the Axis powers were Mussolini, Hitler, and damn it, I can't remember the guy from Japan, and it's embarrassing to me not to know that, but they were Axis. There was a world war, for God's sake. And anyway, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said this weekend that neither Moscow nor Washington believe she can productively be negotiated with. I happen to agree. I think she's dumb as a bag of hammers, but that's a personal deal. Political listed NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, described as a Trump whisperer for European NATO members, Hungary's EU envoy Balint Oder, who must soften Prime Minister Viktor Orban's anti-Brussels rhetoric, and veteran Trade Commissioner Maro Sefcovic, dubbed Mr. Fix-It as those with supposedly the toughest jobs inside of Brussels. And Collis, number one on that list. I find it amusing because, of course, they're at each other's throats. Of course. So I wanted to share that story with you today. So has anybody been following? So England, Britain, for a long time, there's been a good deal of protest about the open doors that they are, that people are, they're calling them boat people too. They're coming across, hundreds of people on packed boats coming across the English Channel. And so this past weekend, thousands of people marched through East Sussex town of Crowborough over the weekend to protest the government plans to house asylum seekers on a former military site. The march came after the British Home Office announced plans to house 500 male asylum seekers at the former army camp in Crowborough, a town of about 20,000, as part of a wider effort to end the use of hotels for temporary accommodations. Men, women, and children joined the demonstration in protest. Hundreds of residents marched toward the former military training camp for a 12th consecutive weekend, waving St. George's flags and chanting, "We want the Labour Party out." Local reports said 27 alleged asylum seekers arrived Thursday, with the government stating they will stay no longer than 3 months while their claims are processed. Despite official assurances, protesters marched through Crowborough expressing concern over the impact of housing undocumented men in the community. Some cited previous incidents at asylum hotels, including sexual assault, as heightening their fears over safety. The initiative to house asylum seekers at former military sites is part of Labour's pledge to end the use of taxpayer-funded asylum hotels by 2029, which currently costs billions of pounds each year. Earlier reports said the Home Office plans to resettle as many as 10,000 asylum seekers across the UK at 14 additional shelter sites. Under the plan, migrants would be accommodated at former military facilities that have been upgraded and could begin receiving arrivals immediately. Mounting anger over immigration has sparked protests across the UK, echoing concerns in Spain, Sweden, Germany, and other countries. High-profile sexual assault and violent crime involving migrants have fueled political debate across Europe and intensified calls for strict immigration and public safety measures. This decades-long migrant crisis is being driven by conflict, poverty, and political instability in the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. Western interventions, including war in Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan, as well as support for uprising in Syria, have destabilized governments and worsened violence across the world, forcing many to flee. And folks, on a macro level, huge picture, way up in the satellite sphere, when you look at what the West has done with regime change and violence everywhere, creating these things. There's a story I want to share with you about the Kurds, who we allegedly have just abandoned, which we'll get to in just a second here. But these type of conflicts that we go and create problems. Like, let's take the example that I always use of Ukraine, right? Let's go to Ukraine and what the West has done with Ukraine over the last 20 years, 30. We have played our part in creating this conflict. And what has happened? Millions, literally millions upon millions, half the population of Ukraine is no longer there. Half. They had a population of some 40 million, pretty close to it, when Ukraine was given independence or had its independence back in whatever year that was, 91, 92, something like that. And now they only have half of that. And most of that has been in the last 4 or 5 years, that the doors are open all over Europe for these. Why? Because we did our part in creating a conflict to destabilize Russia for the same macro things that we're trying to do across the world today. We just created another one in Venezuela. And what did they show on all of the TV? Oh, all the Venezuelans in Miami are celebrating. Yeah, that's because they're in Miami. They've left. They aren't going back to Venezuela. They're not going to go back and fix their country. Ukrainians aren't going back to Ukraine. It's not going to happen. You know, all we're doing is using it as an excuse. Why don't we help them fix their own world instead of having them come and destabilize ours or the rest of the world or England, which this is happening. It's happening around the world, except in places that don't allow that sort of thing to happen. But we create a lot of the conditions that destabilize governments and the world. We, and I don't mean we, me, and you, I mean we, America and the West, we create some of these things. You know, the talk of taking over Greenland, I think of it from this point of view. What we have already done in Venezuela isn't doing anybody any favors. You have a different master. That's it. Trump's the new dictator down there. That's it. Maduro was the dictator before. Now it's Trump. And, you may not agree with that philosophy, but what's the difference? What difference is it to the guy in Venezuela that is looking for a job and looking to raise a family, that is looking to have something positive in his life? What's he got? You could say, yeah, but what Trump did is so positive for all of them. Okay, let's assume that's true. Who benefits? Who benefits? Big money. Before it was some dictator, now it's big oil companies. They're the ones that get to suck all the money out of Venezuela. It ain't going to stay there. What do we get? Trickle-down economy for Venezuela? We get the trickle-down. The pennies they make are great, but the big money is going to the same pockets it always goes to. Different set of pockets this time. But the same rich, elite, globalist a-holes will get the money for this one because they're the same rich, elitist, globalist a-holes that do it all over the world. Same thing's going on in Ukraine. Same thing's going on everywhere. And what are we doing? We're taking the small stories from England with people protesting what's going on. Americans protesting about the open borders. Why? Because we all have the same long-term concerns. And what happens? Your culture is changing from what it used to be, the way America was when I was a kid, to the realities of now. Anyway, that's a bit too further than I wish to go on that. I want to switch back to my, because I haven't talked about it in a little bit, the peace talks that are allegedly going on. They haven't revealed anything, and it's more just noise. And let's see. Vladimir Zelensky has been encouraged by Italy to, make a deal. Ukraine Zelensky is losing in the conflict with Russia and needs to urgently sign a peace deal, says Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini. He made the call in response to Zelensky's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I probably should have shared that entire speech with you instead of just a critique of it yesterday. It truly is. If you get a chance, you should go out and listen to it. And maybe I'll share it on the biggest day in radio, which is Wednesday, tomorrow, on Damn Radio. But Salvini made this call in response to the speech at the World Forum. The Ukrainian leader ridiculed the EU, said it was indecisive, and insists that it needs to know how to defend itself, and use Ukraine to defend Greenland instead of relying on the U.S. Zelensky failed to express any gratitude at all for the receiving 193 billion euro, or $227 billion in military and financial assistance from the EU since the escalation that's taken place since February of 2022. In a post on Facebook on Sunday, Salvini said that we have heard Zelensky, who, after all the money, effort, and aid he has received, still has the nerve to complain. My friend, you are losing the war. You are losing men, credibility, and dignity. Sign a peace agreement as soon as possible, he wrote. According to Salvini, the choice that the Ukrainian leader faces is between defeat and a complete rout. I happen to agree with that assessment. On Friday, Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani called Zelensky's speech in Davos not generous, considering the support which the EU has provided to Kiev. Italian lawmaker Rossano Sasso from Salvini's Lega Nord, Northern League party, suggested last week that if the EU truly wants to help the Ukrainian people, it should stop funding Kiev. He must have been listening to International Flavor. And instead, ask Zelensky to accept peace. Russian, U.S., and Ukrainian delegations held 2 days of talks in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates earlier this week, using a trilateral agreement for the first time. Arrangement for the first time since the conflict's escalation in 2022. Zelensky commented on the negotiations on Sunday by saying that under no circumstances will Ukraine agree to territorial concessions. Funny that, isn't it? He will instead continue sending all the remaining men, which there aren't very many left, to slaughter on the Eastern Front. Crazy. Kremlin press Secretary Dmitry Peskov said Monday that Russian President Putin, his stance is that the territorial issue is, of course, of fundamental importance. I mean, it's obvious. All you got to do is have a look. He was referring to Donetsk and Lugansk, as well as Kherson and Zaporizhia, which have officially joined Russia as of the fall of 2022 as a result of election referendums. Later, Putin's envoy Kirill Dmitriev insisted that Zelensky's reluctance to face reality has been delaying the peace process. Well, very much true. So, have you heard that Zoom is out? France is allegedly getting rid of Teams and Zoom. Isn't that crazy? And they're going to go with a locally developed app. The French authorities are planning on phasing out the American teleconferencing services like Teams and Zoom within a year and replacing them with a domestically developed app. This from Civil Service Minister Delegate David Emile on Saturday. He said the country needs to detoxify itself from U.S. technology. The bulk of European data is stored on American cloud services through companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. So in Russia, they have Wildberries instead of Amazon. They have, what is it called? I can't remember what their platform is called. But they don't have Google and, they have Yandex instead of Google. And but they control Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have over 2/3 of the market. And AI majors dominate the European AI sector. So they're, of course, talking about diversifying there as well. Last year, media reports emerged that the European governments and companies have been rethinking their dependence on major U.S. cloud providers with concerns about their own data sovereignty, privacy, and political leverage. Isn't that crazy? Earlier this year, the director of the Center for Cybersecurity in Belgium, Miguel de Broeker, claimed that the EU has lost the internet because storing data within the bloc is impossible due to the dominance of American technology. The official added that EU regulation of AI was blocking innovation that could improve the situation. I don't know. I think every country is involved in attempting to find its own share of AI these days. So we've come right back full circle on the topic of the day. The UK is complaining about its own dependence on U.S. satellites. This is, it's the same concept. A major British contract to build new military satellites has sparked concern in London about the UK's growing reliance on the U.S. for critical communication. At the center of the debate is Skynet 6, a planned fleet of next-generation military communication satellites that will replace and expand the UK's Skynet system, which is used to connect armed forces at home and overseas. The £10 billion, $14 billion program is being contested by Airbus, a European aerospace group that has run the UK's military space program for 25 years, and Lockheed Martin. According to unnamed officials, there are doubts that the sensitive project should go to a U.S. headquartered company, as Washington's policies are seen as increasingly unpredictable. Recent remarks by Donald Trump towards European NATO members over Greenland have heightened concerns that political tensions will affect defense cooperation. Interesting effects, huh? A decision on which company will get the contract is expected by the end of 2026. Airbus has large satellite building sites in Stevenage and Portsmouth, employing around 3,000 people, and sources told the paper that billions of pounds of potential exports would be at risk if the company loses its role in the UK program. Lockheed Martin, of course, is promising to build a UK facility if it wins the contract. The U.S. pursues its own high-profile military projects in space. Last year, Trump announced the launch of the Golden Dome, aimed at building a space-integrated shield capable of intercepting missiles from anywhere in the world. It is a cutting-edge system combining existing defense with new technology across land, sea, and space, including orbital sensors and interceptors. Have you heard that Russia is planning to launch a rival to Starlink? Yes, indeedy. 300 satellites will be put into orbit by Moscow, Roscosmos, and this according to the head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Bakanov. This came out just recently, last week or so. Russia is going to launch its own satellite network similar to Starlink. Starlink provides high-speed internet via the world's largest network of satellites with over 9,000 in low Earth orbit. The service began rolling out in 2020 and, according to the company, now has 9 million users in more than 150 countries and territories. Officially, it's not available in Russia. But if you get your satellite little link thing that you can buy and put on your camper or your car for using in the woods or something, it'll still work in Russia. But you got to buy it somewhere else. On Friday, Bakanov showed Channel 1 journalists a Russian-designed terminal for satellite broadband internet access, saying that it will allow users anywhere around the globe to stay connected. The head of the country's space agency added the serial production of the hardware will begin the end of this year. An orbital constellation of more than 300 satellites will ensure that Russian system called Rassvet, which means dawn, is fully deployed and operational by next year, said Roscosmos CEO. It is very important to provide connectivity to all territories not covered by terrestrial communication networks. In November, the head of Russian Parliament's Info Policy Committee, Sergei Boyarsky, told TASS that the low Earth orbit satellite constellation would be Moscow's response to Starlink. The project, developed by Moscow-based aero company Brio 1440, will allow for a qualitative leap in providing communication to Russia's remote regions, said Boyarsky. Because that is a big problem if you're in the middle of nowhere. Now, my phone generally works. I have T-Mobile, and I like T-Mobile because, from what I understand, at least it used to be this way, and T-Mobile is owned by, or was owned by, one of the largest, or is associated with, the largest phone and tech company in Europe. And therefore, when you go overseas, I get free internet everywhere, and it, tell you what, it was a little more difficult this time. There were in my last trip to Russia, which was in September, was about, it was much worse then than it has ever been. And it's always been just fine anywhere in the world that you go to a T-Mobile. They have an international plan that you can get for same price as, whatever it's global, works everywhere. And you can use it for your directions. You can get, info, all of that stuff. And, but now it's a lot worse. They're blocking it. Google is blocked. Everything is blocked inside of Russia. And so it was quite a bit different this year than it was in previous years. Ukraine has received 50,000 Starlink terminals since 2022 from Elon Musk. Last year, Musk called his satellite internet the backbone of the Ukrainian army and said the entire front line would collapse if he turned it off. Officials in Moscow repeatedly expressed concern about the weaponizing of technology, while the Russian military has developed effective electronic warfare means that can jam the Starlink signals. Crazy stuff going on these days, and everyone should pay attention. Well, we started today with the bias of AI and the internet, and we just finished with the bias of Starlink and Elon Musk. I hope that you join in every day. And there's an interesting story coming out tomorrow. I'm gonna provide quite a bit of information about where we should go and what is going to happen with the Ukraine war. I've stayed away from it for nearly a week now, and we shall have a big update tomorrow on what is going on, the effect of the discussions this past week, and where do we go from here, friends and neighbors. This is International Flavor. I'm glad you have joined me this morning, live from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. Hope you join me every day from 7:30 to 9. Tomorrow's the biggest day in radio history. Every week it occurs on Wednesdays on Damn Radio, and I hope you join us tomorrow here on International Flavor. All of my shows and all of Damn Radio's shows are set out there at damnradio.com/podcast. You can go listen to prior shows from all of the wonderful content that we have. And mine personally are out at internationalflavor.com. Join me every day, and thanks for joining me today.